Good morning, everybody. We're going to conclude the truncated week of reviews, and sorry about that. I just had um, too. I had too many um, prior obligations to find time to record uh, 3 reviews, so that's why I moved this one to Saturday, because this one was supposed to be on Wednesday. But anyway, we're going to conclude the truncated week of reviews with a review of one of my favorite documentaries, 2022's The Immediate Family. For those of you that don't know, The Immediate Family is a band that is made up of Lee Sklar on bass, Leland Sklar on bass, Russell Kunkel on drums, Danny Korchmar on guitar, and Steve Postel on guitar, as well as Waddy Wachtel. And they're basically a group of studio musicians that were at one time called The Section, and they were the premier studio musicians of the 70s. I mean, these guys played on everything. And Denny Tedesco, the director of the Wrecking Crew documentary, which we talked about some time ago, and by the way, I'm going to put a link up in the cards to that review so you can see it if you missed it. But Denny Tedesco decided to make a documentary on these musicians in the style of the Wrecking Crew documentary, called The Immediate Family. And like I said, they were at one time called The Section, and they played on everything. I mean, from James Taylor to Crosby, Stills and Nash to Crosby and Nash to Warren Zevon, to everybody. And what Denny did is the way the documentary is structured is that each musician gets their own little mini bio, and I believe he starts out with Leland Sklar, and I love the way this documentary is laid out, because there's a lot of animation in the documentary as well, and with like each member getting, there's little animations of each member of the band, as they're telling their life stories. And but it's so cool. But along with the biographies, they tell stories of some of the records they worked on. One of the records that is featured heavily in the documentary is Carole King's Tapestry, and basically through interviews with James Taylor, Carole, and Danny Korchmar, and Leland and Russ, they tell the story of, um, Carol's rise to fame as a solo artist. And, you know, they tell the story of how Carol started out as a keyboard player for James. As you well know, she played on Sweet Baby James and, Mudslide Slim, I think. And uh, they tell a story of how, James kind of encouraged her to perform her own songs, when they were on the road, and how she decided to go into, become a solo artist. And, and something else that, the band tells how they, got in contact with Carol through Peter Asher of Peter and Gordon, who later became a record producer. And, one of my favorite stories, though, is a story that Waddy tells of working with Linda Ronstadt. One time they were on the road, on tour, and they decided to go to a strip club, and Linda asked to go, and the girl working at the strip club, taking IDs and whatever, asked Linda for some ID. And so, Waddy sits there, incensed, and she says, "Don't you know who this is? This is Linda Ronstadt." So she, and the girl still asks her for some ID. And Linda proceeds to sing something. And, of course they let her in. But, Linda, something that I learned from this documentary is that Linda was one of the boys. She liked to hang out with the boys and play poker and whatever. But some of the other musicians that are featured in the documentary include, like I said, James Taylor, Phil Collins, Carole King, Jackson Browne, and they even talk about what they did. The musicians even talk about what they did when, like the 70s ended and everything started changing the music business. And one of my favorite, stories is like when Waddy and Keith Richards talk about filming The Expensive Winos, and how Keith sought Waddy out. And but anyway, and but as an offshoot of along with the Immediate Family documentary, Russell, Lee, Waddy, and Steve and Danny decided to record a couple records, one of which is called The Immediate Family, and they are tremendous too. And so if you get a chance to, you should check them out, because they are tremendous as a band in their own right. And, one of the things that is similar to the Wrecking Crew documentary about the immediate family documentary is that there is a roundtable discussion, with Russ, Lee, Danny, Waddy, and Steve in kind of what, kind of the Wrecking Crew style, to where they had, um, uh, Hal Blaine, Carol Kay, and Tommy Tedesco talking about the old Wrecking Crew days. Then he decided to do that again with the immediate family. But I remember, the first time that I had heard anything about the documentary is that I belong to Leland's YouTube channel, or I subscribed to Leland's YouTube channel, and I remember he would often, when the documentary was being made, he would often give us progress reports of how it was going, and when it was coming out. And so I was super excited for this thing to come out, because I had always wanted to hear the stories, some of which Lee had already told, because that's what he does on his YouTube channel. He talks about some of the artists, or a lot of the artists that he's worked with, and but so I, through him talking about the documentary on his YouTube channel, I was super excited when it finally came out on DVD, on Blu-ray and DVD. And actually, it was nominated. I think it was nominated for an Oscar, but it didn't win. I'll have to go back and look, but I think it was nominated for an Oscar for like best documentary or something, but it didn't win, which is a shame. But so if you get a chance, please check this out. You won't be disappointed if you're like a huge music buff, like I am. You will enjoy it, and once again, it came out in 2022. I give this 5 stars. Shot and produced by Adam Barr. Audio and video provided by WeVideo and the YouTube Music Library. Screen recording taken from IMBD. Images provided by Google Images. achieved using iPicky.com. Along with our review of the Wrecking Crew documentary, I'm also going to place the link up in the cards to the Immediate Family's YouTube channel.